Good morning, everybody. Let me just start the webinar today. Here we go. I am Rachel Hammer. I am the product manager here for rotary devices, so that includes the milling devices as well as the engraving devices. Today we're actually going to talk about SRP Player and one-sided milling. More specifically, we're going to concentrate on using the the MDX40A. And you might be able to see it in the background here. We're going to kind of go over basically the 5 steps in SRP Player, going through all the different steps, and then also setting up your material, as well as using one tool in the MDX40A, and then actually outputting the job to the machine. Okay. So yes, here what we're going to do are 4 little bullet points that we're going to go over. Okay. So before we actually get started into SRP Player, I just want to give a quick review of the MDX40A. You can see the picture here. We actually have some very cool things about this machine. Here are all the specs of the machine, but some things to keep in mind are that the acceptable materials for this machine is going to be plastic, wood, chemical wood or compressed foam, and wax. Some other things to keep in mind, this comes with a virtual panel, which is basically how you're going to move the spindle of the machine and set your origin. Later on in the presentation, we'll actually go over this a little bit more, so you get to see that in action. Also, the RPM is going to be 15,000 RPM, so that will be really fast to get through some of the thicker, or harder foams and wax and things like that. So that's a really great feature there. Also, the max work area, just here, as you can see with the one-sided milling right here, we're going to have a maximum work area of 12 by 12 and then a Z of about 4 inches, 4 1/8, an eighth inch. Okay. Also, the footprint of the machine is relatively small in comparison to other machines. We have a footprint of about 26 inches wide by 30 inches deep and about 21 inches high. So that's a pretty good size to sit on your desk or bench or anything like that. And of course, we have some options to go with it. We're not going to show them here, but you also have the option of getting a 4th axis, which will actually allow you to do 2-sided milling automatically, as well as a 3D scanning unit. It's a probe scanner. These are options that you can add on later on, or you can get it all in one shot. We won't be really talking about those options today. Later on in other webinars, we will go over actually milling with the 4th axis. So stay tuned for that. Of course, last but not least, it's bundled with our SRP Player, which is huge because this is our CAM software. This is actually what's going to create the toolpath or the map for the machine to cut out your part. Okay, so that's what we're really going to concentrate today, is basically how does SRP Player work and the steps involved to actually mill a part. Okay, so let's begin by actually looking at SRP Player. Let me just minimize this, and we're going to open up SRP Player. Excuse me, I already have it open. All right, so this is actually the part we're going to be milling today. It's a really simple little kind of donut mold. One-sided milling is great for molds that you're going to use for either injection molds or any other mold that you can think of, as well as vacuum forming. So here we're actually cutting in. Vacuum forming, of course, you would kind of have a convex shape, and then the plastic would go around it. So actually, we're going to mill this little part. I don't know if you can see it right there in the camera, but it's really simple. I've already kind of pre-done it so we can take a look of what the end product is going to be. Okay, so this was done on our machine here last night, and we're going to see how we actually got to this point. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to close this out so we can start fresh, like you would at home or at your office. So we're going to open SRP Player. You can see here it's got like a little treasure box with an apple in it. That's the icon. So you just click on it, open it up. Some things to do before we get started is we want to make sure that we have the correct machine selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, Preferences, real quick. We're going to go to Cutting Machine, and we're going to make sure that the model name is the model that we're looking for. So yes, we have our MDX 40A, spindle unit, everything standard. We're not going to use the rotary axis unit, so that's not going to be an option we can click on. Just make sure that it's not on 540, because what happens is if you create this part and at the end it's going to look for a 540. And if you don't have it, you're going to have to start all over again. So that's why it's really important just to verify that you have the correct machine. Once you have the correct machine selected, just hit Apply and then OK, and we're ready to go. So the next part of actually making the part is importing your file. So here we actually have an STL. There's two ways you can import a file. The easiest is just drag from your desktop, drop it right onto your workspace, and you'll see that it starts to import. Okay? The other option, of course, is you can actually come to File and then Open. But I find the dragging and dropping like that is the best and easiest. Okay? So it imports the data, pops it right in. Now you can see here that our model kind of came in at an angle. So this isn't going to be the best way to mill it, so we want to change the perspective on it. So right here we have this little green guy, and if you start clicking on the different orientations, you'll see that the mold moves. Okay? So there we go, that's perfect. We want the donut shape to be up, and you can see here we have X, Y, and Z for our orientation. Yep, that's how we want it. Great. Next thing we want to do is we just want to actually go to step 2. Now you can see here, literally, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, and as you move through the steps, we're going to answer questions, okay? If you have any questions about what's going on in this step, we have these little question marks. You click on them, and it actually opens up the SRP Player Help, and we'll actually talk about what specifically you're looking at, okay? So at any time throughout the process, you need a little bit extra help, find that little purple-blue question mark, and you can read a little bit more about what's going on that page. Okay? So next, we're going to click on Type of Milling. Now we know we can go to the second step because it's here highlighted in orange. You can see the other steps are still in gray. So once it's orange, you can move on to the next step. Okay, again, we're going to answer some questions. And once we satisfy all these questions, we can go to the next step. So here we're looking at our type of milling. Do we want a better surface finish, or do we want a faster cutting time? Let's go faster cutting time. Okay. Now you can see here it gives you a little picture of kind of what is to be expected. Now here we're having more of a jagged edges, flat edges, where better finish area or better surface finish will give you a nice smooth finish. Okay, so it depends on what you're looking for. Okay, so we'll go faster cutting time. Next, does this model have flat planes, or does it have a lot of curved surfaces? We're looking at a lot of curved surfaces. You can see there, that's a little dome shape, and everything else is pretty flat. So what we can do is, well, the curved surface is really important to me, so I'm going to say it's more curved surfaces. Okay. Next part is this a block workpiece? I go, yes, this is a block workpiece, and we're only going to cut the top. Okay, and so that's all we need to do for one-sided milling. Okay. Now we've satisfied all the questions it's asked, and you can see that step 3 has become orange and highlighted, so now we can move to step 3. Here's actually where you're going to take your material and put in the dimensions of the material. So this is actually the piece of the material, the blank material that I have, and I've pre-measured it, and it's actually going to fit perfectly for our model here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in the different measurements here for the part or the piece here. So we have, it's actually 116 millimeters. And so I'm just going to go through here real quick and type in all the measurements for it. Okay. And now once you've actually typed in all the measurements, you'll see a virtual box here, this light green color. And that's actually your material, okay, in the virtual space here. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to create a toolpath. So what this is going to do, it's going to take your material that you specified. So we're actually working with a soft chemical wood. Okay. We've put in our dimensions, and it's going to create the map or the toolpath for us. So you can see that it's processing, and once it's processed, you'll see that it has these little red wavy lines. So what we can do now is we can actually go to preview results, and this is actually great. What we're going to do is we're going to hit preview cutting, okay? And what it's going to do, it's going to actually run through virtually cutting the part out. So we can actually see what our part's going to look like before we actually cut it out, okay? And so you can see there that we actually have a really great part there. Kind of looks like what we finished with, right? Okay. So if we like what we're seeing here, and it says here our estimated cutting time is just about 2 hours, we can actually move on to actually performing the cutting. Now, if we don't like what we're seeing here, maybe it doesn't go all to the bottom of the part, or grooves or holes aren't cut, you can actually click on here, and it will actually tell you a little bit more of what's going on and what to do and how to fix it. Okay? So if you're seeing something that you don't really like in your part, you can look down here and see how to fix it. The other great thing about this is, so you want to compare what your original file looked like to what's actually being output, you can hit Show Model. And so what that's doing is it's going to show you the model that you originally brought in compared to the model that's going to be actually created. So if you're like, yes, that's exactly what I was looking for, perfect, then we can actually start the cutting. Okay? So next thing you want to do is perform cutting. So here is what we actually have going on. So this is actually our little recipe. And actually, I don't have this tool. Actually, I have an 1/8" tool. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go back, and I'm going to have to tell it, oh, no, sorry, I don't have that tool. We're going to use an 1/8". So you can always go back through steps if you need to change something. Okay? So we're going to go back up to Create Toolpath, and we're going to edit our toolpath. Okay? Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here once you expand each step. So we have a roughing step and a finishing step. Okay? So the roughing step is going to remove a lot of the material. It's going to be our big bulldozer that's going to get all that junk out. And then the finishing step is going to come in with a much finer step over to kind of round out all the parts and make it really smooth. Okay? So really simply, there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of options here. We're not going to really get into many of these right now, but what we are going to do is we're going to change the tool. So here you can see ball, and you see this little picture of like a little end mill or tool. That's where we're going to change our tool. So you click on that, and now you can see the tools that we can use. So we're going to use our 1/8" ball. We're going to hit Apply. And we're also going to change our finishing, because we're only going to use one tool for this project. Okay? You can use multiple tools, but for this demonstration, we're just going to stick to one. Okay? And click Apply. And then we're going to close. Now, if you noticed, our little red lines here are all gray. So we have to recreate the toolpath. So click Create Toolpath, and it's going to think about it. It's going to create our little map for us, and then we can actually preview the results. And it takes a little time sometimes, depending on how complicated the toolpaths are or how complicated the shape is. So yeah, there you go. So you can see here that actually our time is increased significantly. Basically, that's because of tool size. All right. And then what we want to do, we're like, yep, that's exactly what we want. We can compare it to our model here. That looks good. Now we can actually perform the cutting. Okay. So here we actually have, like I said, our tool list. So this is going to be our ingredients for our recipe. So what this means is we have an 1/8" ball tool in mill, and it needs to be sticking out of the collet at least 26 millimeters. Okay. So before we actually hit start cutting, let's go over to our MDX and see what we need to do to actually set up the material. Okay. Let me just. Okay. Here is our MDX. You can see that I actually already have the part in there. Let me just open this up. Okay. So what I've done is I've actually put in, if you can see this, maybe it's better in, we've put an X. Okay, so we're going to find the middle of our piece. Okay. And this is actually where we're going to set our origin points. But before that, let me just close this up real quick, because we want to actually move this to the view position. So basically what view is going to bring your table all the way forward to you so you can take a better look at what's going on. Okay. So when putting your material on your board, you want to use double-sided tape. Different tapes here better. Carpet tape isn't necessarily a great thing to use because it sticks really, really good, and sometimes it's hard to get that off. So 3M makes a really great tape, and really whatever double-sided tape that you like, I would definitely use that. You want to use something that's thin. You don't want to use something that's very thick because actually you're going to lift the part up and you might get uneven milling. So here's my double-sided tape. You can see how thin that is. It's almost like a little piece of paper. Also, you can see how wide it is. This is about 1 inch. That's really great because you cover more surface area that way and really get your part on your table. Okay. So also the other thing is we want to move or change our cutter out. There's actually there's the spindle and then the collet, all right? So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get 2 wrenches. So here I have my metric wrenches. I've got a 10 and a 17, okay? So this kind of takes some practice. So if you guys aren't really used to this, you may want to practice before you actually put in your part and all this stuff. It requires a little bit of dexterity. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my 10 and I'm going to put it on the collet, okay? And that allows me to kind of see now where to put my 17 on the spindle. So you can see how it fits right in. Now I can squeeze them together to tighten, or I can pull them apart to loosen, okay? So there's my tool. Now for me, the easiest way to put the tool in is I put it in there and I kind of eye it, make sure that I have enough of that tool sticking out. Now remember, it was what, 26 millimeters? Now what you can do is that's the minimum. I like to leave a little bit more just in case, because sometimes when you tighten things, things move around. So I want to give myself more than enough clearance. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm actually pressing the tool kind of against the collet so it stays. And like I said, it requires a little dexterity, so that's all one hand. And now I'm going to take my other wrench up here, oops, and then I'm going to squeeze them together and tighten it. Okay? You don't want to tighten it too much because when it starts to spin, the collet will also tighten a little bit, and it might be harder to actually remove the tool and could actually cause tool breakage in the end. Okay? So once you've actually installed your tool, and you've made sure everything's tight and you've put your material down, next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take this tool and we're going to have to find our 0, 0 points, okay? Easiest way to do that is the virtual panel. So let's go take a look at that and see what that looks like. So again, we're back here at the virtual panel. Just quickly click on it and you can see that it pops right up. We know that it's the MDX40A virtual panel. It's got all these little buttons on here. Okay. Actually, if we can take a look at our machine right now, we're actually going to move. Well, let me just close the cover. Always want to close the cover. If it doesn't, it will error out and tell you to close the cover. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to move. So I'm going to actually, I've preset my origin point, so I'm going to move straight there. So if we take a look at it, you can see that the table's moving back and the spindle's moving over. Excuse me, I put the machine coordinates. So we're actually going to use user. When you use machine coordinates, this is something that you can't set this. It will always be sort of in the corner right there. We want to use user coordinates. So I'm going to actually use that and move it. There we go. See how it moves straight above it. The other thing I've done already is I've actually already set my Z origin using my tool sensor. So let me just show you what that looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the spindle down a little bit. Okay? And what I'm going to do right now is we have our tool sensing puck. You kind of see that there? And I'm actually going to set it right underneath the tool. Okay? And we're going to set our Z. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to the virtual panel, and where it says set origin point here, we're going to select set origin using sensor. Okay? This is going to be the best way to do it versus you can also move the tool all the way down to the surface, but this is going to be much more accurate. So we're going to hit detect. So it gives you a little warning, okay, make sure that the cable is connected, make sure the Z0 sensor is in place. Yep, we've made sure all that, so we can click continue. And so what's going to happen is it's going to slowly move the Z down until it touches off on that puck. Once it touches off on the puck, there you go. Detection operation has finished. We're good. Now make sure you remove that puck from your part and just set it off to the side. You can also take it out. We just have this little tool holder right there. So now all of our origins have been set. So we're actually now ready to output the file. If you want to double check all your origins, you can definitely do that. So we can actually check our Z origin, and it will bring it right down to the surface. And you can double check that if you'd like. Okay? So we're just going to move it right back to the view position. Some other things to remember on the V panel. This is actually how you're going to move the table or move the spindle. This is Z, goes up and down. You can also adjust how fast it goes. We have high speed, low speed, and of course you can do it in increments of 1 step, 10 steps, or 100 steps. Okay? Great. So once everything's set, we can actually just push this off to the side. I always like to have this sort of open and running while I'm actually running my part. So next we need to do is just click Start Cutting. So what it's going to do is, let's see here, it says not responding. Okay, this is interesting. So what you would do is you would click on that and you can actually then start the part. Another option to do is actually output the file. This is really convenient if you're working maybe on SRP Player in a different computer or a different room and you want to bring this file just into the virtual panel. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to walk you through the process just as if you were outputting it from SRP Player. So let's take a look at this. So we're going to click Next, and it's just telling me, okay, did you set your origin in the middle? Yes, we did. That's where that X comes in. And now it's going to actually save the file. So we're going to actually save it to our desktop real quick. And we're going to actually just save roughing and then finishing. Okay? And then it's going to say, you know, cutting finish. So what it's going to do, it's going to go through the process, it's going to cut it, and at the very end, it's going to give you the screen saying finished. Great. Okay? So now how we actually take those files and then move them into our virtual panel is really simple. You just go down to Cut, and then you actually drag and drop your files straight in there. Okay? So you want to make sure your roughing's first and your finishing second. Okay? So once you have all that, now you can output. And then you'll see that the spindle is started. And it's actually going to start that process for you. Okay? So now you can see that we have our virtual panel going off. It's got all the X, Y, Z. You can see where it is in the user coordinates. This is really cool because you can kind of see what your tool, where it is. If you want to speed up the process, perhaps maybe you started cutting, you're like, you know what, I could probably go a little bit faster. You can actually use the override right here, and you can actually increase it. And you can actually increase your spindle speed as well. So this is really great stuff to do on the fly. Okay? And then, of course, you can bring it back down to 100. And you can even slow it down a little bit more, too, if you think, oh, it's cutting too much. So that's essentially what it's going to do. It's just going to sit there and cut for as long as it takes. When you actually take a file and you output it from SRP Player, what happens is it actually freezes up. So you can't bring in another part and work on another part until SRP Player is done. So for something that's going to take 4 hours like this part, it's probably a better idea to output the file and then take the files and then drop them into the cut window on your virtual panel. Okay? So really that's it. What we've done here is we have used the 5 steps in SRP Player, and we have we've set up our material. So we've actually used the material, put the little X on there, put it on the table, found our origin points. And then we used a single tool, so we just installed the tool and started the part. So it's not that hard. Again, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the end. You can hit start cutting. You can output the file if you like, and then drop it into the cut window on your virtual panel. Okay? And again, if you had any questions about certain steps along the way, you can always go back to that question mark, click on it, and it will talk all about SRP Player and what's going on. Okay? I'd like to thank you guys for coming out one more time to our webinar series here at Roland DGA. Again, check our website out if you'd like any more information on past webinars or the recording of this webinar. Yeah, you guys, thanks a lot.